Okay, and looks like Chair Todd Cusimano has called this meeting to order for the December 11th Operations Committee meeting of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. Starting with the roll call vote, do we have Chief Krakauer for Bolinas Fire?
Present online.
Do we have Todd Cusimano for Mill Valley?
Here.
Uh, for City of San Rafael, we have Oh, it looks like we don't have John Stefanski for us today. We do have San Rafael, Alvin Schrader for San Rafael Fire. We do not for this meeting have Dan Schwartz of Larkspur. Do we have, for County of Marin? Chief Weber is not here.
Fire Chief Mike Markman, is present.
We do have Chief Marcucci here, Mike Marcucci. For Inverness, do we have David Briggs?
Present.
For Kentfield Fire, do we have Chief Pomey?
Here.
For Marinwood, do we have Eric Drakeson?
Here.
For Muir Beach, Chris Gove. For the Novato Fire District, Chief Peters.
Here.
For Sleepy Hollow Fire, do we have Chief Mahoney?
Here.
For Southern Marin Fire, do we have Chief Tubbs? We do not. For Stinson Beach, do we have Chief Perry?
Here.
And for Corte Madera, Adam Wolf. For the town of Fairfax, Heather Abrams. And I do believe Heather will be joining us online. We do not have Krista Johnson for the town of Ross. Do we have Dave Donnery for San Anselmo? Okay, so Chair Cusimano, we do have quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to item 3, agenda adjustments. Do we have any recommended adjustments to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, public comment. We'll open time for any members of the public that wish to speak on an item not on this agenda. Do we have any members of the public in the room that wish to speak now?
And it does not look like we have any comments in the room. And just for those for today's meeting, please note that the public is welcome to address the Operations Committee at this time on matters not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of the committee. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2, the committee is not permitted to discuss or take action on any matter not on the agenda. Comments may be no longer than 2 minutes and should be respectful to the community. We do ask that those joining us online and in the room, please silence cell phones during the meeting and mute microphones when not reporting out. If there is anyone online who would like to participate with a comment, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And sir, it does not look like we have any comments at this time.
Thank you. We'll close open time. We'll move to item 5, planning and program managers oral report.
Good morning. I will keep this pretty short, but wanted to provide a few updates to the committee. First and foremost, we just sent out invitations to folks in the Inverness area to join us for a public field trip on January 16th at 10 a.m. We're really trying to focus our outreach on residents in the area so they can see the great work going on in the Sea Haven area. That is work right along the northern end of Inverness, right along the state parks boundary. So we're reaching out to residents in that area first, and then next week we're going to send a larger invitation to the general public to join us for that field trip. We're excited to show off some of the work that we've been able to do in the coastal zone because we have the emergency proclamation from the governor's office to work under in the coastal zone. And this group determined, put $200,000 worth of JPA funding and $300,000 of core funding towards work in coastal Marin. So a lot of work has been going on, so we'd like to show that off. And then we have other field trips on the roster for the spring. We're going to be pretty ambitious next spring, so stay tuned. We're going to bring some folks out to San Rafael, see San Rafael Hill, and see a potential burn unit. Lots of great work going on out there, especially with reducing cover of non-native invasive fire hazardous shrubs like gorse and broom. In Novato, we'd like to, or Novato would like to highlight a demonstration garden and show off some great work there. And then we will be bringing folks out to the greater, sorry for the typo there, Greater Mill Valley Fuel Break. We brought the public out to that project area in October. That was kind of a before snapshot. And now that work is going on, we'd like to bring them back out and see after. So we'll be scheduling those and sending out some invitations to the public to join us. So really excited to feature some of that great work. And then I'd also like to ask Mark to provide a little bit of an update on some Zone Zero programming.
So based on a grant that we received and accepted in June of 25 from the Marine Community Foundation, we're creating what's called the Zone Zero in a Box program, and it's designed to give our residents the easy button for the residents who want to come into compliance with Zone Zero. Whether it's they want to come into compliance because they want to make their homes more wildfire safe, they want to come into compliance because of future ordinances that are going to be coming down the pipe once we get the definition from the Board of Forestry, or I think the major reason is going to be insurance. I have a feeling that a lot of insurers are going to start saying, you need to be Zone Zero compliant or we're not going to insure you. So we're creating a one-stop shop through our inspection programs throughout the entire JPA, where residents can go into the Zone Zero in a Box program and work on hardening their homes and creating that Zone Zero compliant space. We've hired 2 positions that were funded by the Marin Community Foundation grant for 2 years. Kathleen Cutter and Joe Lewis are the 2 people that are in the position now. They've been there a couple months. They've been reaching out and connecting with each of the member agencies, receiving feedback, and they're also looking for a beta location, which is probably going to be down in Southern Marin for the beta test for an HOA. And then we're also looking in Central Marin for another beta test location. Once the beta tests are completed, that's when we'll bring Kathleen and Joe in to give you guys a nice full presentation of how they are developing that program.
Thank you. And then last item, for those of you who are out there in internet land, wildfire risk reduction work is a year-round effort. So during the winter is when a lot of planning activities take place. So for example, right now, a lot of crews are kind of finishing up out in the field and we're getting ready for the winter and rainy season. Some work has already taken place out there to make sure that projects are all kind of buttoned up in terms of potential erosion concerns and other things. And then other projects will continue through the winter because it's a great time to pull broom when the soils are soft. So you might see some crews out there hand pulling broom out in our project areas in the winter. We're also doing a lot of planning for next field season. So especially for the large projects that have a lot of kind of regulatory requirements, we're talking now about what the next treatment areas are going to be, where biologists might need to go to do botanical surveys, where archaeologists may need to go to do their surveys, where the geologists may need to go to provide their input on where to modify activities on steep slopes, et cetera. So a lot going on now. And for those member agencies listening in, if you've got projects that you have concerns about in terms of erosion or other considerations, please do reach out. We've got experts in place and ready to go and ready to help out. So that's it for my planning and program manager report.
Thank you. Good stuff. Any questions for Mark or Ann? Seeing none. Any of our teammates on Zoom have any questions for staff? Are there any members of the public on Zoom that wish to ask a question of staff?
And there are no hands at this time.
Thank you. Moving on to item 6, the consent calendar. Looks like we have one item, the minutes from the May 1st, 2025 Operations Committee meeting. Is there any discussion or changes that the board wishes to make or the committee wishes to make on the minutes? Anyone on Zoom? Seeing none, I'll open it to public comment. Are there any members of the public on Zoom that wish to speak on this item?
There are no hands.
Okay, I'll close that back to the committee. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Okay, can we take a roll call?
Of course, and that is a motion by Eric Drageson with a second from Chief Pomey. Starting with Bolinas, Chief Krakauer,
Yes.
Mill Valley, Todd
Yes.
Colcomono, San Rafael, Calvin Trader,
Abstain.
City of Larkspur is not here for this meeting. County of Marin, Chief Marcucci,
Yes.
Inverness, David Briggs,
Yes.
Canfield, Chief Pomey,
Yes.
Marinwood, Eric Drakeson,
Yes.
Muir Beach, Chris Gove is not here for this meeting. Novato, Chief Peters,
Yes.
Sleepy Hollow, Chief Mahoney,
Yes.
Southern Marin is not here for this meeting. Stinson Beach, Chief Perry,
Yes.
and Corte Madera, Adam Wolf is not here for this meeting. Fairfax, Heather Abrams. Town of Ross, Krista Johnson is not here for this meeting. San Anselmo, Dave Donnery. Okay, and so it looks like motion passes with the unanimous vote of all who are attending. Chief, if you would like to announce for the minutes, your name so that we can record. Okay, so we have Scott Albert with Marin County Fire has just arrived for today's meeting, but that motion does pass. Vote with unanimous approval, sir.
Thank you. Item 7, discussion items. We'll start with A, development of the FY 26-27 work plan.
Great. So, a quick overview for those online or that are new to the process. So every year, we take a good long time, December through April, May, to determine how to spend next fiscal year's projected funds. We kick off the process every December, and our kind of staff level working group, the Advisory Technical Committee, kicked off last week. And now our Operations Committee is starting today. So our fiscal year starts July 1, and we take this time from December through April, May to have a lot of discussions about what our priorities are going to be for this next year and really talk through strategy. So we take CPI, we take inflation based on last year, February through February, and that helps inform what our projected revenue is going to be. We don't get that number until mid-March, so we're kind of guessing up until that time, and then we go to the board and determine to what level we should be increasing Measure C revenue based on the CPI. We also have a lot of science and data and modeling available to us to help inform our decisions for next year. We had some available last year. We have even more available now. And with work related to the CWPP, we have a ton of really great resources to help us make science-based decisions. Member agency staff and Marin Wildfire staff submit project proposals, so projects and programs for next fiscal year, into our online web portal. So that's kind of an online form that we fill out, and it helps track what proposals are being generated from each jurisdiction and how many dollars we're kind of allocating for next year's budget towards different efforts. And we have a lot of discussions at that staff level working group, ATC, and we have a lot of discussions at the operations committee level, and create ad hoc subcommittees so we can really dive into the nitty-gritty details of some of these proposals. The operations committee generally finishes up this work in early May, and then we go to the board in mid-May, give or take, to make some final decisions about the draft work plan and budget. And I'll show an overall schedule for that in the next slide. This is just kind of a simpler, more digestible version of that information. So some of the near-term tasks for this committee include choosing a chair and vice chair for this process. And Chief Weber and Todd Cusimano have been really great in these roles over the last season. And Chief Weber will not be participating, but Chief Marcucci will be participating from Marin County and Marin County Fire. So thank you for joining us. But we'll want to make some decisions about how we want to move forward and if Chief Marcucci has the time and the energy to play a role in that scenario. So we can start discussions today. We don't need to make any decisions today, but start thinking about it. And then we'll include this as an action item in January and have a vote in January to determine how to move forward. Today, we are going to start the conversation about around strategic guidance that this committee provides to staff as they start developing their projects and programs for the work plan. And that's also on the agenda today, and we'll cover that in more detail later. But we can start the conversation today and then make some decisions in January about how to proceed and any changes to past guidance that you'd like to make. And then also in maybe January, February, we'll want to talk about ad hoc subcommittees and how we'd like to form those so that a group of a subgroup of this committee can really dive into the nitty-gritty details of different proposals and think through, budget, different questions on strategy, etc. So this slide is the recurring kind of slide that you'll see every meeting during this process, and it just reviews where we are in the process, what the milestones are, what the key dates are, etc. So right now we're kicking off the process in December. In January, we'll be choosing chair and vice chair of this committee. January is also a deadline for reaching out to land management agencies. So national parks, state parks, county parks, marine water, etc. So if your staff would like to do work on public lands that are managed by somebody else, you really want to make sure that your outreach happens before mid-January, or else it's not going to end up within their internal planning processes and their budgeting for next year. And so those agencies are part of our working group, the Advisory Technical Committee. And so they're all part of that conversation. So those conversations are happening. In February, that's this group and ATC will meet again. We'll also really be trying to finalize the JPA-wide proposals and those budget numbers in February. So we have an internal kind of deadline for submitting those proposals of February 13th, because I think that's a Friday, if I remember correctly. And that's really to help set the stage for the core budget and get those numbers in early so we can really start talking budget for core projects. In March, that's when there is a lot of activity, a lot of work from staff submitting projects, finalizing projects, kind of thinking through what to submit and what not to submit and how many dollars to request. So staff will be working real hard with member agencies to kind of finalize those proposals and get initial drafts by mid-March, March 13th, and hopefully pencils down by March 31st. And that gives this committee, the operations committee, time to really dive into those and think through dollars and cents. And is this really meeting the needs of next fiscal year? Probably a lot of meetings or at least a few meetings of the ad hoc subcommittee of this group to dive into that during March and April. So April, ATC usually meets a couple of times. Ad hoc subcommittee of this group meets a couple of times. The meeting dates are on this slide and hopefully in your calendar already. And then in May 7th, that's the last meeting of the operations committee through this process. If the operations committee would like to continue meeting to address other topics, that you can decide to do that as well past May. But May 15th is when the board of directors will consider the draft work plan and budget. And I'll probably request the chair or vice chair of this group to join me at the board meeting to help present and discuss this draft work plan. So that's the process. And just a review of some of the tasks for this group, discussing chair and vice chair. We can do that now, or you can just think about it and we can revisit it in January. Revisiting the strategic guidance, which we will do later in the agenda. And then we'll want to start thinking about creating ad hoc subcommittees moving forward. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Do you want to, anyone interested in the chair, vice chair discussion? I've always appreciated historically the setup of having one of the chiefs be the chair, because I think it's symbolically important. I think it's worked well. And then having, a non-sworn, part of, the vice chair track. And with that, I'm just looking at you, Eric, I think you would be, just all your good work on Mirror and just watching you in action. The past year, I think we do have some policy things to discuss this year. And I think it would be fitting and appropriate if you are interested. You don't have to decide now, but I think out of us on our side, I think I'll support you to be the vice chair. So not to put you on the spot, but any other comments? Yeah. See, no, I think that's good. Any comments or thoughts about it, or we'll do our work behind the scenes over the next month? Yeah. Okay. Anyone any teammates on Zoom that wish to speak on the chair vice chair discussion? Seeing none. What about, I mean, this is pretty standard. I think most of us are used to the schedule, but does anybody want to talk about the schedule or any work, how this is set up as we move forward? Okay. Okay. So are we moving to item B, update for 25? Okay. We'll move on to the update for fiscal year 25-26 work plan implementation. Ann?
Great. Thank you. And I invite any input throughout the process or at the end of the season. If there are things that you'd like to tweak about the process that you think would be helpful, please do let me know. Especially after the first couple of seasons, I requested input at the end of the process, and we were able to incorporate that and kind of adjust timelines and move up like JPA-wide calculations earlier in the process, things like that. So reach out if you have suggestions. Would love to hear them. So at this point, I want to take a moment and just revisit our 25-26 work plan. We're not going to go through every project and every program, but I do want to hit a few highlights and invite some folks in the room to provide some updates on just how it's going, implementing the existing work plan. So I think I'll start off with just a few highlights of JPA-wide projects. This will not be an exhaustive kind of review of everything we have going on, but just a few highlights here. One big one that's on my mind quite a lot is the environmental compliance program. We were able to take a significant amount of rollover into this year's budget from the previous year, which was great, and cut the amount that we were putting towards this program this time around. That was great, but we are really on track to use that budget. So we're about halfway through those dollars now, and we still have a lot of work before the end of the season. So I do anticipate probably putting in a significant chunk towards this program for next fiscal year. So I wanted to alert you guys of that. And so this program generally goes towards existing exempt projects. We have about 46 projects that involve vegetation management and environmental compliance that we're supporting on a regular basis, including CalVTP projects. So the big projects with a bigger lift in terms of environmental compliance. Those projects, the project budgets handle the environmental compliance for the big, like San Rafael, San Anselmo Fuel Reduction Zone, Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break, those big ones. All these smaller ones, the environmental compliance budget comes out of this dollar amount. So we are maintaining and supporting existing projects through a number of surveys, resource surveys, consultation with or coordination with the tribe and archaeologists, geologists, biologists on a regular basis as we implement them. So I want to make sure that next year's budget includes that, and remains to be seen if we want to budget for potential new projects through this process, or maybe the environmental compliance should come out of those project budgets. We can talk about that and what would work best for next year. So moving on to, yes.
Can I ask a couple questions on that? I'm assuming, just for clarification, with the environmental, this is primarily, if not entirely, you're looking at core level projects, not local projects.
Yeah. So mostly it's core vegetation management projects, and then the local projects, the local jurisdictions are handling through their own processes for environmental
Okay,
compliance.
and then was there ever any like final clarification, kind of at a high level of key takeaways from the state's CEQA stuff that they did for fire reduction projects?
Yeah.
I know there was kind of a lot of gray area in there, and I don't know if you all have ever kind of whittled that down to here's what we feel comfortable with following under that guidance yet or not.
Yeah, so a few updates on that. One, the governor's office issued an emergency proclamation on March 1st that we were able to use in a couple of different ways. Southern Marin used it for one project, and then we were able to use it for work in the coastal zone. The Coastal Act compliance component and coordination with the Coastal Commission is a very onerous process. We've been working with the Coastal Commission for long-term permitting for about 3 years, monthly meetings for about 3 years, and we're still not quite there. But through the emergency proclamation process, we have 2 years of approval to work in coastal Marin that started in October. So from October 2025 to October 2026 and to October 2027, we can work in coastal Marin under that approval. That is a huge benefit right now. We're very fortunate to have that in place. So that's giant in itself. And then other recent changes under the environmental compliance world, some new exemption language under CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, a statutory exemption that addresses fire fuels work within 200 feet of structures or 100 feet of roads. And so that's also one that we can take advantage of and even revisit some older exempt projects that we could, potentially address under a new exemption that would give us a little more flexibility to do that work. So quite a bit of benefit from the state, actually, in terms of environmental compliance over 2025. Yeah. So as I kind of get,
Angela, can you turn on your mic?
oh, my apologies.
Trying to get caught up and acclimated. So for the community-wide plan, how is that going to be integrated into like the work planning process? So presumably there are going to be projects that are going to be brought forward as a result of that plan, and how will that factor in?
Yeah, so moving on this slide from environmental compliance, I'll skip over chipper program and go straight to CWPP. We have an item on this agenda today to dig more into the community wildfire protection plan. And so we can address that a little more. The CWPP won't be completed until, a little later, probably next spring and summer. So, but all of the work that's going into building the CWPP can be quite useful in terms of thinking through priorities for new and maintenance of existing projects right now during this process. Yeah, so the CWPP, we allocated $300,000 towards development of the CWPP. And so right now, we've got some folks on the line who will be presenting a little later in this agenda to give you a little more detail about where we are in that process and how we've been working with stakeholders and future outreach on this. And then heading back to chipper program, the chipper program received $1.4 million in this 25-26 work plan. It continues to grow and expand. We see new customers every year. About 20% of the users for this last season were new to the program. So that's great. Definitely reaching new audiences. An increase in the number of pickups and the volume of material picked up. Sorry for the typo on the last. The last item that is supposed to say no anticipated major changes to the program for next year. It seems to be running quite smoothly, and so we don't anticipate changing it up too much unless we hear otherwise from this committee. The 25-26 work plan also includes some budget for modeling, data, GIS, etc. So some of that is going towards CWP related efforts, some modeling, risk modeling on the landscape, fire pathways modeling, et cetera, and data collection. So we worked with the member agencies, especially staff here, Jacob Dadman, and our GIS contractor, Green Info Network, who's a nonprofit, works with a lot of groups locally, a lot of government agencies. We built a data collection system, and staff with our member agencies has been fantastic helping collect that data, so then we can show all of the great work that we're doing on our outward facing maps, show what what shaded fuel breaks are getting done, and roadside vegetation management. We're still working on the roadside piece. We're going to be working with staff to really beef up those numbers and show our work on the map. We've also been asked to show beyond Measure C on this big outward facing map that we've developed. What else is going on? Marin County Parks and other partners, what are they doing on the landscape, and how do we show that in a more centralized location? So we've been working with those partners to start moving some of that project information into this online map. So that's exciting. And then we're further improving the data collection process so that all-in-one kind of app will be able to easily collect data, polygons, roads that are being treated, and display key resource information like riparian areas and spotted owl nest sites and other things, so that it's really easy to see all of that in the areas where you're working and you're doing vegetation management. If my mouse wakes up, I'm going to show you. So on our dashboard online, and this dashboard is available, if you go to our vegetation management landing page, there are a couple of different places where you can find a link to this dashboard. And this shows not only project boundaries for each of the zones, but also where project work has taken place. It's updated quarterly. And so the map that you go and check out today shows work through September, and we're about to add all the October, November, December work in the next month or so. It takes a little bit of time to get it in, make sure it's all ready to display, and that data, as it's collected, informs the fire modeling work. And so it helps us keep our fire modeling, our risk modeling up to date, and also helps us tell the story to the public about all this great work that's going on the landscape. So this is an overall view of Marin County. And then if you zoom in, the numbers at the bottom in terms of acres treated, increase in direct attack acres. So where would resources be able to go in and do direct attack? It has to do with flame length and other factors. Overall fire behavior reduction and flame length reduction, those numbers update as you zoom in or you click on projects. So I encourage you to check it out, and members of the public to check it out, because that is all public. We have a grant program that is well underway, and about 321 grants have been either approved or awarded. This program has $800,000 allocated towards it for this fiscal year. It focuses on grants, vents, gutter guards, fence connections, and some zone zero vegetation. There's a requirement of either 65 and older or 120% of the median household income. So there's an income or an age requirement. And then next year, probably some language around HOAs and how to manage multifamily homes. So some numbers there. This program seems to be moving along quite smoothly this year, and so we're real excited to propose work for next year as well. So from the JPA-wide proposals, we don't have time, obviously, to go into all of them. I'm going to move to the zones, and we do have some folks from West Marin online. So I'm wondering if David Briggs would like to talk about work going on in the Inverness area.
Yeah, sure. We actually just wrapped up the work that we were doing around the Sea Haven neighborhood on the border of the Tomales Bay State Park. We had about $150,000 to work with, and we got about 4 acres of work done. A little bit less than we were hoping for, but it was quite thick in certain spots. And so this coming year, we hope to just do a little bit more of that.
Great. Thanks, David. And that's where we'll be bringing folks out for a field trip in January. Great. And then Bolinas, Chief Krakauer, are you there?
Yeah. Yeah, Bolinas, we've got a few things going on, a couple in the pipeline. We did complete a small vegetation project in the downtown that separates the main downtown business area from a neighboring community on the Little Mesa. Just it's a mid-slope road. We did some we had the TAM crew come out and clear about 50 feet below and above the road and create some nice defensible buffer between those two areas. We do have some budget left, and we're looking at another polygon on the other side of the road above homes and businesses. We're hoping to maybe begin that in early January or late January of next year. We're also working with a local utility water district on an evacuation project. We're working on some arbor reports, working with PG&E and County of Marin as well to hopefully remove and prune some roadside trees next to our main evacuation route.
That's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Chief Perry, are you available?
Yeah, here. How's everybody doing? Stinson Beach, we have a wide variety of projects going on in the community. We've completed 2 and are working on 3 and 4 to complete our work for this fiscal year. And all are focused on geographic proximity to structures and extending the great work our homeowners are doing with additional defensible space on state land and on other public lands. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you. And then I'm not sure if anybody from Marin County Fire would like to mention this work, but a project Blueberry Ridge along a fire road just finished up just this week. So some great work going on in the Woodacre area. So that's it for West Marin, unless other comments or questions for that, and then we'll move on to Central Marin. Great. Okay. I'm just going to mention the Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break here and then ask others from Central Marin if there's anything else they'd like to add. Either in terms of vegetation management activities, roadside veg, or other programs you'd like to highlight. So for the Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break, this is a 38-mile long shaded fuel break all around a number of different jurisdictions in Central Marin. So far, about 471 acres have been implemented. The last 2 field seasons, including 2025, have been pretty arduous, really inaccessible, steep terrain, pretty grueling work by hand crews. So each season, the last 2 seasons, has been a little slow going in terms of acres added. We just had a meeting on Monday with various folks, member agencies, to talk about next field season. And so we'll be continuing some work in the Kentfield area, a little bit of work in Fairfax, some spots that we didn't treat previously. And then Corte Madera and Larkspur, hoping to do some work there as well. So right now what we're doing is one of the things that we've been able to do is use that fire pathways modeling to help kind of identify some of those high priority areas. And then talking to our chiefs in the area to see what their priorities are. And then we'll be scheduling all the surveys that need to happen this spring, botanical surveys, et cetera, that need to happen this spring in order to set the stage for work next field season. We are going to do a little broom pilling on this project in the winter. We're also working on our annual report for the CalVTP. That's the environmental compliance process for this project. We've got a CAL FIRE grant that we'll be closing out and providing a report to CAL FIRE on. And then, of course, getting all those surveys done and right to enter forms signed for residents. This project overlaps about 2,000 different parcels. So there's a lot of right to enter involved. Anything else on this project from Central Marin folks, or anything else in Central Marin you want to highlight?
I don't know if anybody else is online, but I can confirm that the work that the crews are doing is absolutely amazing in those rugged areas. The ingenuity that they've come up with in order to remove and re-chip some of that material. I've spent multiple days up there with them, just watching them. So shout out goes out to the contractors that are in there doing that work. In the Kinfield area, we've also begun doing maintenance on projects that were completed 4 or 5 years ago when we first started, mainly around evacuation routes. So I think that's an important thing for not only this group, but MWPA wide. We are in year 5, headed to year 6, and maintenance is going to become something we're gonna have to stay on, or else we're gonna fall behind.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are, we've been talking about evacuation route dollars and making sure to coordinate and really amplify this work between those two different kind of buckets. Anything else for Central Marin? Okay. Thanks, everybody. Okay, let's move on. So, Sandra Fell, feel free to share a screen if you'd like to. Otherwise, just take over a mic and let us know what you've been up to.
Hello, everyone. So for our mid-year review, I broke this down into our different goals. So our goal 1 of vegetation management, we've been continuing along with sassafras. So with 25 acres of initial treatment, 12 acres in progress right now, we are winterizing an area for demob. So we're putting down wattles, stuff like that, making sure it's all ready for the precipitation to come. We've done 35 acres of follow-up treatment. This includes herbicide and other broom pulling and whatnot, and then some 15 acres of spot treatment along with Marin County parks. Flashy Fuels is set to start again in May this year for 175 acres of goat grazing and mowing. And so far, we've also concluded 33 acres on Santa Fe Hill under that recent work that's been happening. We're continuing along fire roads, supporting Marin County Fire with the CAL FIRE grant they've received and assisting them with that on San Pedro Mountain. So that work has continued, and a huge thanks to them for that fantastic work. Fuel break maintenance is also continuing along several of the areas we've already completed throughout the city of Santa Fe and Santa Fe zone. And recently, about a few weeks ago, we did conclude a 1.7 acre landscape restoration project on West San Pedro Mountain. So this included reinstalling about 75 plants of native toyon and native coast live oak in an area that was decimated by eucalyptus prior. On goal 2, our detection alerts and evacuation, our safe parking program has concluded in the city of Santa Fe. So we included no parking areas and parking restrictions in areas where engines could not access due to limited width. So that just concluded. So that was fantastic for allowing engine crews to safely access all areas of the city. And then we're also going to be starting the evacuation route vegetation treatment program in January of this year. The Ranger program continues to be a huge success of removing potential ignition sources from our open spaces. Our grant program, we have 54 funded grants with 8 in review and 18 pre-approved. And our direct assistance program has helped 14 residents complete their Zone 0 vegetation treatment. We're also going to be incorporating a home hardening DA pilot program following the Xylo plan mapping and new CAL FIRE mapping. This will include installing fine mesh for residents through a contractor with the city. For our public education, we have 2 installed demonstration gardens, one of them installed this fiscal year, one of them installed prior, and those are fantastic. The communities have been enjoying them. We're continuing to work on ways to engage with the public via signage and outreach. The community outreach events, we've done 18 events this year with wildfire-specific public outreach. Our goal 5, defensible space and home hardening. We have 3,811 inspections that occurred this fiscal year, with 4,140 occurring this calendar year, with a focus in the higher fire hazard severity zone areas. And this was all thanks to the fantastic full-time staff we have at San Rafael.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions for San Rafael before we move on? Okay. Nevada, we have Lizzie Neal online, I think. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes. Good morning, committee members. So I'm just going to share my screen. Are you guys seeing? Oh, are you seeing this report?
It's loading right now. There you go.
Okay.
You can see it.
Okay, so I'm going to present our quarterly report that we provide to the Novato Fire Board. This is our first page. And here we have some Q1 impacts, Q1 highlights. So we had 307 full home assessments completed and just over 1,600 roadside surveys. We, for our grant program, had 217 vegetation management grants, 8 Zone 0 grants, and 132 home hardening grants. And we are on track to finish out our grant program funds by the spring, so by Q3. The next page, we showcase our fire mitigation ranger work. So this July to September, we had two investigations conducted. We observed 3 new encampments and removed 3 5-gallon gas cans from open space. Most of August and September, Officer Lyons was on patrol, so that time was not billed to the Marin Wildfire project. And then we have our community outreach showcased here in our socials. We did 7 outreach events this quarter. And then we like to include the Chipper Day numbers, even though that's the Marin Wildfire Chipper Day program, just because our residents really get great use out of that program. Then we have our grants again. And then here, vegetation management. So basically just showing that we've spent a total of $676 and treated about 159 acres. And that concludes the report.
Thanks so much, Lizzie.
Thank you.
Any questions for Lizzie? Okay. So moving on, is there anyone from Southern Marin attending? I know there's a conflicting meeting going on right now with Fireside. Okay, so I don't think we have anyone from Southern Marin to jump in and provide a report, so I'm going to wing it. So I know in one of the big efforts going on in Southern Marin is the Greater Mill Valley Fuel Break, which I mentioned previously. That's a 23-mile long fuel break all around Mill Valley. That project also overlaps a lot of this kind of smaller previously approved projects. So it's kind of an all-encompassing project that got underway this last fall. Super exciting. Right now, what we're doing with staff is really building out that tool that I mentioned previously, where you can, we've been using it on the Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break, and now we're building it out for the Greater Mill Valley Fuel Break. And it allows really easy reporting of project implementation activities, and at the same time makes all of your sensitive resources visible to a small subset of users, because some of that information is really sensitive, so we have to protect it. But so it's a great tool to help you track your right to enter, etc. So we've been working with staff on that and getting all of their kind of checks in place, so that each week when we meet on this project, we're going through the checklist and checking in to make sure that all the things that need to happen for the project are happening. And so Southern Marin staff has been great, and our consultants have been helping quite a bit with that. And then we'll be bringing folks out to that project again in the spring to show work. And then also in Southern Marin, we've got a lot going on in Muir Beach. I don't believe anyone from Muir Beach is available to talk, but please unmute if you are. Otherwise, we've been working with Southern Marin to help with projects. MWPA staff has been really working hard in West Marin on helping implement projects in the field, managing crews, and in Southern Marin and Muir Beach. So big thank you to Ted Briggs and other staff who've been out in the field quite a lot. In Muir Beach, we have been working on the Muir Beach Trail, so vegetation management along that very overgrown trail that is completed. Did some work along Highway 1, non-federal portion of Highway 1 this year in the spring, and that was completed. We're planning on doing a retreatment of Highway 1 on federal property, so we're working with National Park staff to make that happen, and we've got a Caltrans permit in hand-ish, and we should be able to move forward with that in January. So that's really exciting. That'll be a retreatment of a project area. We treated in. That was a really good soundtrack. That should be an annual tradition now. So work along Highway 1 on federal land is a retreatment of work done during the winter of 22-23. Let's see. We're also working on Terwilliger, and that is an area with hazard trees that are leaning over the roadway. It's been a real concern for a lot of folks. So we've got work underway there. It used to be monarch habitat. So we had a monarch specialist, a couple monarch specialists go out and assess the area. It's no longer monarch habitat. These are just dead standing trees that are leaning and going to fall eventually and have fallen. So some of the trees we were going to remove are already down. And so that work is going to be starting in January. And a big thanks also to the county who's helping us with encroachment permit for work along the roadway. So lots going on in Muir Beach this year. And a lot of that, some of that is because the county has been great about working with us for some of the smaller scale work. And we were able to get work permitted through the governor's emergency proclamation as well. So that's what I know about Southern Marin. And I think that's it for the moment. That's the end of my report. Any questions or comments or additional items you want to mention about your zone?
See none. Any teammates on Zoom wish to make any additional comments? Hearing none. Thanks, Ann. A lot of good work. Let's go to item C, Community Wildfire Protection Plan Update.
Great, thank you. Charlotte Jourdain is going to provide a presentation and an update on the CWPP, and we'll be adding some additional great information about some of the modeling that will eventually inform the CWPP and quite a bit of our work. So Charlotte, go ahead.
Okay, good morning, Operations Committee. I'm Charlotte Jourdain. I'm an independent consultant from Marin Wildfire, and I'm going to be talking to you about our next county-wide Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Let me just share my screen for 1 second. I apologize. I think this is it. Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm not going to go into slideshow mode because that tends to shrink everything that you are seeing in the room. Okay, so I'm going to go over the general information first, and then we'll get into the specific of the progress and where we're at. So what is a CWPP, a community wildfire protection plan? It's first and foremost the wildfire risk component of the broader local hazard mitigation plan, and it connects the cities and towns through the general plan under the local safety element. So that's very important because it means that it allows us to qualify for FEMA and other types of grants. It's the purpose of the CWPP is to create a framework to prioritize prevention activities, such as those that will eventually be submitted for grant requests, enhance interagency collaboration, coordination, and alignment, and communicate these priorities to the public. The proposal for the next CWPP is that fire chiefs will approve the final document and web interface, and then bring it to their board or council for adoption. And we're looking at having this happen in the spring or late spring or summer 2026. This is a little bit different from previous CWPPs, which were developed and finalized before Marin Wildfire existed. So we now have Marin Wildfire as a structure that supports all of the member agencies, and so we think this is the best vehicle to align around the plan. Why do we need a new CWPP? Well, very briefly, the last one was updated in 2020. Since then, there's been significant increases in disastrous fires nationally. Also, a lot of improvement in GIS-based risk assessment methodologies. You'll hear about one of them today. And then, like I said, with Measure C, we've made substantial funding and investment improvements into fire prevention programs, and we need to reflect that into the risk assessment so we get an updated and refreshed pictures. Now, what we're going to do with this CWPP is that the final delivery will be presented as both a report and a map viewer. So there'll be a very strong digital component of the final product. And this will allow us to update it annually and to integrate mitigation efforts as they are implemented on an annual basis so that we get a reprioritized list. And we hope that this annual update process will take place around this time of the year, every year, right around the end of the calendar year, so that member agencies have all the information they need about this new picture of risk to develop their proposals for the work plan development that takes place in the winter and spring. Very briefly, who is part of the CWPP this time around? It's essentially anybody that has anything to do with fire and fire prevention. So it's all of Marin Wildfire's member agencies, and then we're partnering with Tiburon Fire District, the City of Belvedere, and Tiburon, and their special districts to be sure that this plan will be absolutely entirely countywide. And these non-MWPP and non-MWPP agencies are paying for their share of the overall project costs. What's in the CWPP? I just want to be sure everybody is on the same page here. We start with a fuel model, and we look at science and modeling around fire behavior, so including all of these indicator of fire probability, intensity, rate of spread, and all this other good stuff that we need to worry about. And then we take in all of the data we have on implemented and maintained wildfire mitigation projects. So all the fuel break projects that have been implemented already, all the home hardening and defensible space implementation, the subscription to Alert Marin, all the things we're already doing. And then we crunch that and we look at what is it we can do about fire if it happens. So the weight and the speed of response, what are the values at risk in the community that we'd like to protect? What's a sense for the difficulty around evacuation, and then social vulnerability is very important here also. And that together brings us this prioritized action plan to reduce structural ignitability. And throughout this process, we update the public and engage the public. That's a requirement for the CWPP, and then present the draft results before the plan can be approved and adopted. And I'll say a little bit more about public engagement in a moment. So for this new CWPP, we've been working hard with your staff and all member agencies to create a prioritization framework. And what the group landed on is that the CWPP will prioritize activities across evacuation zones. So the entire county has been divided into evacuation zones. And we will use that as the sort of the unit to show the unique risk for different factors within each of these zones. And the themes, the prioritization themes are here. So vegetation management, detection, alert, evacuation, roadside clearance, and on-parcel risk. These should be very familiar to you. They don't align exactly with our strategic goals because for prioritization purposes and because different stakeholders are looking at this with different buckets of funds and other, missions and ability to affect change, it was more effective to divide the themes in this manner. And if you'll indulge me, I will just briefly show what these are this is the preliminary result. So your teams, your staff is currently reviewing this platform for the various themes that we are concerned with for the various zones. So, any one zone can just look at only their MWPA zone, and then you can filter for, I want to only see the top 10% of the most dangerous zones in my area, this type of thing. And then there's a lot more to this platform, but I wanted to give you a sense for this digital format that we're moving towards to allow for that a little bit more of a dynamic kind of update. And we can click on any one zone and have a lot more detail about what's the priority in this area and how these rankings came about. So again, ask your staff if they have their eyes on this. We're asking them to review and provide feedback by middle of January so we can move forward in the process. These priorities will be presented side by side with Marin Wildfire's progress dashboards. So we don't want to just show what the risk is and what the priorities are in terms of addressing this risk. We also want to show what we've been doing so far, right? These two parts of the story go hand in hand. And so the Marin Wildfire Board of Director has approved strategic measures for each of our strategic goals, and we have developed public progress dashboards for each of these. I can show a brief example for vegetation management. And so we will be showing these types of measures in parallel with the picture of risk that the CWPP proposes, so that it's a little bit clearer what is it we're doing to address this risk. And the links to these dashboards are here. I'll forward the slide. One thing that is important to note is what the CWPP is not. So as I just explained, it's not a mitigation activity tracker. So it doesn't track which vegetation management projects have been implemented where at the detailed level, like a dashboard does. It includes this on the annual update so that we can refresh and reshuffle the priorities, but it's not the tool that we will use to track. And it's not a detailed program design tool. So this is not the tool where member agencies will go to design the exact footprint of a fuel break or the exact communities that they want to re-inspect more frequently for defensible space. It's meant to be a little higher level. And this was the result of a lot of discussions with staff and understanding that for every program and treatment that we design and implement to affect change, there's so many things that go into it that it's too hard to represent on a priority dashboard like the CWPP. We have been working on all of this very closely with the Advisory and Tech Committee and the City of Belvedere and Tiburon. This group met 4 times until now to provide input to the consulting team. We have also had lots of small group meetings to ensure that the data and the prioritization framework reflect the need of all the stakeholders. So hopefully there's alignment and satisfaction on that end. This group provided feedback and a review on the initial fuel model, so the baseline for the CWPP risk assessment. It's currently reviewing the preliminary results on the platform I just showed you. So we're asking all of the agencies to review what their prioritization look like in their zone. The next meeting is in January, and then we hope to have the draft plan ready to show to the public by the end of January. So that's the timeline for that. Going to public engagement. So we're fortunate to be able to partner with FireSafe Marin on this effort because FireSafe Marin was awarded a grant outside of MWPA funding that they can use to facilitate public engagement throughout the CWPP process. So they've been working hard at issuing updates on the progress on their monthly newsletter. They've been keeping various groups informed about where this is at, the Firewise communities and other professional organizations around Marin. And where Fire Safe Marin will become very integral to the collaboration here is we are planning 6 community meetings. So that's 1 per MWPA zone and 1 for the Tiburon Belvedere area, starting on February 1st. These meetings are envisioned as mini fair format with different tables to seek input on the draft results of the CWPP, understanding that this is a complex planning document, but it is a requirement of the CWPP to engage with the public on these themes. We plan to include the following stakeholders, obviously the residents, but also the board and council members, including those of the fire district or agency, city or town, and Marin Wildfire, and any special district. Your staff has been contacted about this. Mark sent out an email, I believe, last week, and we're going to begin the coordination process. The intention at each of these meetings is really to provide local and specific content. So we're not going to show them a county-wide map at the San Rafael meeting. We're going to show San Rafael specifically, and this is we're fortunate to have this digital platform for that reason. And again, like I said, Fire Safe Marin, through this outside grant, is able to assist in coordinating with the local fire agencies. So you'll be hearing more about that process as we settle on dates and the final format in partnership with your agencies. I want to end with the annual update process. So as I mentioned, the vision is really to be able to update this annually at the end of the calendar year to inform the work plan development on an annual basis. So after this first iteration, so to speak, for the next update, we are looking at obviously including any progress on mitigation activities because those inform remaining residual risk. And we'll also be looking at integrating, hopefully by then, progress on urban configuration. We're not able to include that in this initial version because we don't have county-wide results for urban configuration modeling. And you'll be hearing a little bit more about this aspect of urban configuration in just a minute. But before we do that, I want to make sure I address all of your questions or comments on this.
Thank you, Charlotte. Great presentation. Any questions from the committee for Charlotte? Any teammates on Zoom have any questions for Charlotte? Okay, great job, Charlotte.
Thank you. So I'll pass it off to Scott Farley with Xyloplan. Scott is the, I guess, co-president oh, there's Dave. Okay. Scott and Dave are Xyloplan sort of, leaders here. And we are partnering with them for pilot project on urban configuration in Marin that's funded by the Moore Foundation and the Marin Community Foundation. And they're going to say a little bit about that. This is going to be important for the development of the work plan, as Anne described. And then eventually we hope we can use the results of this to integrate into our CWPP. So Scott, go for it.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Charlotte. Hey, everybody. It's great to be here. You'll recognize me from some of our past work. I'm also working on some of the CWPP work. But today I'm super excited to talk with you about these urban configuration models that we're doing. And Dave, if you want to share screen, we can get going here. So just to kind of recap here, we're working on 10 different pilot communities. These are funded by the Moore Foundation and by the Marin Community Foundation. If you go to the next slide, these communities span many of our different types of community, rural and urban, north and south. And so it should give us a really good sense of how the modeling and the data that's coming out of the modeling can be put to good use across the county. So in each of these 10 pilots, we're looking at kind of the 3 objectives shown here. We're looking at risk assessment. So which of the areas of these communities, so neighborhoods and parcels, are at the greatest risk of conflagration. But really taking that information and making it actionable by looking at which parcels should be prioritized for defensible space and home hardening, and trying to look at which mitigations, so vents, roofs, defensible space, right, among the different options that we have to harden our parcels, which of those would be most effective on each parcel. So really trying to narrow down to how can we get the most bang for our buck with the budget that we have available. So Dave's going to walk us through kind of our conceptual modeling framework and some of our sort of ways of looking at urban risk and the way that wildland fire can transition into a urban fire. Just one quick note before we get there is just thinking a little bit about how this is different than all of the other modeling that we have so far in Marin. I think really that the key difference here, as you're watching this presentation, the key difference from what we have is sort of the dynamic nature of this, spanning fire in the wildlands, coming into the built environments, and then burning from structure to structure. That's something that we don't have a lot of modeling for yet. So this is filling kind of a key role in that data-driven planning. Dave, I'll pass it to you.
All right, thanks, Scott. What we'd like to really break down is the mechanism of ignition. I think it's very important to recognize that wildfire and urban fire related, but fundamentally different, and that while wildfire is inevitable, that transition of wildfire into urban conflagration is not inevitable. So we'll walk through the mechanisms of ignition and then how we match mitigation to those mechanisms of ignition. So given wind, in this case coming from top left, and an ignition with fuels that are capable of carrying fast-moving wind-driven fire, we are likely to see fire spread. And we model that with fire pathways so we can understand the alignment of topography, fuel, and weather that will bring fire to the built environment. In this particular case, we see here at the edge of this cul-de-sac, we have a fire pathway encountering the built environment. And so as fire closes with the built environment, we have an opportunity along those pathways to introduce splats, pods, fuel breaks, other treatments that create a varied age class mosaic or a labyrinth that the fire has to work its way through. That will slow a fire, will not stop a fire, and is dependent on the availability of a firefighting response to take advantage of those areas of fuel mods. If you go back to the definition of a fuel break, it's an area of modified or reduced fuels from which firefighters can carry out offensive and defensive actions. So as fire counters the community, we also have not only ground component fire, but we have three-dimensional ember cast, where firebrands or embers are carried aloft, are blown by the wind, and can land on homes that are not immediately at the vegetative edge. And I think it's very important to recognize that while ember transport is very much a factor associated with urban fires, the often repeated statement that embers produce fires, embers travel, or fires produce embers, embers travel miles in advance of the fire, where they ignite homes that ignite other homes. Each one of those statements are true independently. Certain fuels under certain fuel fire conditions can produce embers that can be transported up to 1.25 miles in advance of a fire. That doesn't generally happen in the fuel types we have here, but it's not true that those same embers ignite homes that burn at scale. The quantity of embers required to ignite homes at scale is much more limited to much closer to the fiery front, the flaming front of the fire. All right, so as we get fire encountering the built environment, if the homes at the point of transition have vulnerabilities that will allow fire to transition from vegetation to structures, those homes will start to burn. And if homes that are not directly exposed by ground component fire have vulnerabilities to ember attack, specifically home hardening in the form of a Class A roof covering or assembly, retrofitted vents, either a fire-resistant vent or 1/8 or finer mesh, and zone 0 inclusive of wooden fences. If those things aren't present, embers can ignite homes. And once those homes begin to burn, they threaten adjacent homes through structure-to-structure fire spread, and they produce embers in their own right that further propagate the ember attack on downwind homes. And as those homes begin to burn, they then expose adjacent homes to fire that burn, which produce more embers that can find other homes or other vegetation, and fire can then propagate rapidly across the landscape in a manner that exceeds the capacity of the firefighting response. These are the mechanisms through which we see a urban fire be initiated by a wildland fire. And so the question then is, how do we mitigate against this? And how do we match our mitigations to the mechanism of ignition. Because for these homes that are deep within the community that are seeing ember attack but not ground fire, it's not necessarily relevant that they have defensible space or perimeter fuel breaks, because if the home itself is not hardened against embers, you're still likely to see the loss because the mitigation didn't match the mechanism of ignition, which becomes a prioritization tool. So the way we put all that together is we take a hard look at where, let's go back one, sorry. We take a hard look at where we see exposure to a ground component fire and the associated ember exposure. And we understand that for the fire pathways under the modeled wind conditions that are most associated with both frequency and consequence in a particular area, we can then understand where the areas are the greatest risk of not only ignition from vegetation, but subsequent ignition of homes. And so we're looking at things such as whether or not the home is on or adjacent to a fire pathway in the form of an entry point or a point of transition, whether that home has continuity to other homes, and then all the other factors that you're used to, such as access, roadway, the structure separation distance to others, and their exposure to the underlying wildfire risk. And so we take a look then from left to right, for the first being the dependency analysis, meaning that if a single home in an isolated setting is ignited, that's a loss, and that's bad, but it's not a catastrophe. So we're looking at areas where the ignition of a home by a wildland fire has the greatest consequence because it is in or forms a portion of a conflagration block, which you see in the middle, which is the homes that have the ability to ignite other homes. So that if one home in this string of linked homes that have tight structure separation distance, if one of those homes were to ignite, what would that do to others? And where are the natural bounds, i.e. usually a larger road, that would prevent one block of homes from automatically igniting another, so we can understand the consequences of fire entering at any particular point. And then on the right, you see a propagation analysis saying, if fire were to become established in these homes at this point, what would happen? And as Scott alluded to at the beginning, that's where we're using a urban fire spread model, using structures as the fire most likely to carry the fuel to analyze the consequence of an ignition at a certain point in the absence of a firefighting response and in the absence of the wind stopping, right? So this is a worst case scenario. So we can then start to match our mitigations, not only to the mechanism of ignition, but to the areas of the greatest consequence. So we can look at a prioritization tool, since we can't do everything everywhere. Where are the areas where prioritized and concentrated mitigations can achieve network effects and have the greatest benefit for the greatest number of people? And so, as I mentioned before, we want to be very thoughtful about matching the mechanism of the mitigation to the mechanism of fire spread. So on the left, we see homes that have exposure to vegetation fire. These are homes on or adjacent to the vegetative edge that are at a point of transition where a fire pathway encounters the built environment. In these areas, we need the full suite. We need defensible space, probably extended defensible space, zone zero, and home hardening. We need it all because they're going to see both ground component and associated ember cast from ground component. And then in the second category, we see homes that don't have direct exposure to the vegetative edge. They are not going to see ground component vegetation fire, but they're still within the ember deposition zone where they are likely to see a significant number of wind-blown embers. All right, these folks need Class A roof covering or material, they need vent retrofits, and they need zone zero inclusive of wooden fences because that matches the mitigation to the mechanism of ignition. And then lastly, we see homes that have exposure to adjacent structures burning. And there we're beyond the scope of mitigations at that parcel. If fire gets to these homes, it is going to be via an adjacent structure that is burning. And defensible space and home hardening are ineffective against an adjacent structure fire because the flux, the watts per meter squared over time of a burning house, significantly exceeds the design parameters of defensible space and home hardening. You can be full 7A with a full defensible space mitigation, and your home will still burn if an adjacent structure within the tight enough SSD ignites. So the mitigation in these cases is to work our way back upwind, upstream, and recommend mitigations at the homes that will carry fire to that point. So matching the mitigations to the mechanism of ignition. And that comes together in a prioritized mitigation plan. So Scott, I'll hand it over to you to explain the math.
Yeah, thanks. So really concretely, what we're trying to come up with in these 10 pilots is a prioritized list of parcels for mitigation that would have the greatest impact on community level resilience, right? So we take all of that information that we just went through, we slice and dice that, and then try to come up with a map like we're seeing here that shows which parcels, which if we hardened those in the ways that we just kind of walked through, would result in community benefits, right? So not just benefits for that particular parcel, but for larger scale benefits. And so really that boils down to where are we going to see many dependent ignitions and where are we going to have the structures that are exposed to the vegetative edge, where that fire becomes initiated, right in that transition zone. If we can cut off the transition, we tend to have large scale community benefits. With this type of modeling, we're able to look at how much risk is left in the community if we were to implement this plan, and how much are we getting for return on investment by doing this plan. And so this is giving us, it's building our toolbox of additional metrics that we can use to evaluate the benefits of the plans that we're proposing, but also potentially to track risk over time as the work is actually done. If we go to the next slide. So I'm not going to go into sort of the details of thinking about residual risk at this point, other than to say, I think this is really exciting because it gives us this metric of how close to solving this problem are we, and have we done enough? And we can track our progress on that journey. As you see in the bottom left, as we mitigate more parcels, we start to get a diminishing marginal return by hardening additional parcels, but it gives us a sense of, compared to where we were, how much further do we have to go, and how much further can we really buy down that risk? And what's really interesting about this is, as you see in that image in the middle, when we harden those priority structures, those that are on the edge, those that facilitate fire transmission into the community, we are able to show the residual benefits throughout the community, right? So those network effects really are able to be clearly illustrated with this type of modeling, with this type of conceptual framework, so that we're able to show, right, those large scale community benefits as a result of doing really strategically located defensible space and home hardening. And I'll just mention these pilot communities are specifically focused on risk reduction in the built environment, right? The same kind of approach could be taken for extended defensible space, other types of fuel reduction. Right now, really just focused on that residential risk reduction. And if we go to the last slide here, just kind of thinking about where we're at with the pilots and what could come next. We have completed 5 of the pilots, and we're working with agency staff on reviewing those results, trying to get feedback, incorporate that feedback, answer those questions. We've got an additional 5 pilots that we are looking to share by the end of the year or in early January. And then same thing, right? Really get that feedback, make sure that this is resonating with the agency staff, make sure that we can actually build a plan that is useful around this modeling, because if it's not useful, then it's just modeling, right? And so really trying to get this to be as useful as possible. And then lastly, we're looking forward to submitting a proposal to the work plan process that would provide this type of modeling on an ongoing basis for the whole county, and to integrate with the data stream coming back from Fireside and the DSI programs that will be able to better capture what work is actually being done on the residential parcels and how can we track that risk over time with the metrics that we were just looking at. So that's what we have for you today. We'd love to field any questions that you may have.
Any questions? Okay, good job. No questions. Good presentations.
Todd, if I can just say, I think it's going to be very important to hear back from staff on these that are part of these pilot communities, because they'll be the one to be able to say, we received our results. Here's what we're going to do about it. Here's how we like it, and that will inform the process for spreading this countywide. So, looking forward to getting feedback from those communities that have been receiving their results.
Thank you, Charlotte. Offhand, do you know who the Southern Marin Fire contact is with you?
Yes, I'm working with Fred and Sorry.
Marshall.
Marshall, that's it. Thank you. And we are presenting the results for the first time tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Okay.
Mhm.
That's right. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to item D, operations strategic guidance.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Charlotte and Scott and everybody. That was a great presentation. I'm going to transition to a discussion for this operations committee that we can start this time around, and then we can maybe take some action next month. Let me share my screen here. Great. So each year, this committee provides guidance in terms of kind of overall approach and strategy for the next work plan. And I'm going to show you what this group came up with last year. And we started kind of talking about it in December, continued in January, and I think we made final decisions in February. So let's take a look at what we worked on last year. And then you can start thinking about how you might want to tweak this, add, subtract, etc., for this coming season. And then that guidance will help staff with member agencies kind of fine tune the approach, and we'll want to make sure that they're following the approach that you guys determine. So I'm just going to run through them. There are 2 slides. There are 8 in total. House out, so continue that house out approach. Continue to reduce wildfire risk to communities by providing resources directly to residents for home hardening and defensible space activities. Prioritize shaded fuel breaks directly adjacent to communities and explore the potential for strategically placed landscape area treatments or SPLATs, as were mentioned in the last presentation, informed by pathways modeling. Prescribed fire, expand the use of prescribed fire and public education and involvement around beneficial fire. Evacuations, continue to prioritize evacuation planning and projects to improve safe and efficient evacuations. Insurance, partner with insurance companies and the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, or IBHS, to help avoid insurance cancellations and control costs for homeowners. 7 is public education. Increase public education, particularly to new audiences. Support activities that fire agencies and Marin residents can take, such as home hardening and defensible space, particularly Zone 0, safe evacuations, and reducing human-caused ignitions. Number 8 and last was added last year. Zone 0 and LRA maps provide input to the state regarding Zone 0 and LRA hazard maps as needed and provide guidance for local ordinance updates on Zone 0 and other home hardening and defensible space requirements. So that's what the group came up with last time, and now is a great time to discuss potential edits. We don't need to make decisions today, but now is a great time to have a conversation around this and perhaps take some action in January. So feel free to ask questions or discuss as a group, or just start thinking about it and over the holiday season.
Thank you, Ann. Okay. Anybody want to start it off? Any comments or thoughts about this initial list?
And looking, can you go to the next slide, Anne, if you don't mind? My recollection, especially on the number 8 there with the LRA maps, a lot of that was due to the fact that there was a lot of adoption happening with LRA, SRA maps and updating. So I don't know if that would kind of remain on the list. I'm not right off the top of my head familiar with what that kind of cycle is for that. I know it's every few.
LRA maps were adopted by all the agencies throughout the county, and so that's kind of done.
So we could probably delete that language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know of the timeline to review those LRA maps. That's about the state.
Okay. That sounds good. Sounds like maybe it's not relevant for this next year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I assume
great.
insurance as well. That's obviously a priority. Or yeah.
I think so. We've got some things turning right now that I can't share yet, but I'm hoping by the time we get into February, I'll be at a spot to be able to share some recent local successes that will point to that item. But I do think keeping it in there is important. We might want to modify it, but I do like where you guys are going. We've been adding to this strategy every year. We haven't been removing from the strategy. So I do think it's time. Maybe we decide not to take anything off of it, but I think we do need to have the conversation. Is it time to start removing some of these items off the overall strategy? Because if we end up with 10 items of strategic guidance, it starts to become overwhelming.
Do you mind going back to the first slide, please?
And what I'd suggest for today is let me know if you have potential edits and ideas, and we can work on some possible edits and include it in a kind of staff report, attach it to the January agenda.
I don't have a edit. I appreciate the cliffhanger that Mark gave us there for the assurance. And I certainly would advise keeping that on there. I think for the common person, that's probably the thing that's most pressing in all of their minds and the area that they're most looking for. How is all of this helping that? So yeah, I certainly wouldn't remove any of that language. I mean, that's the question we get asked the most by far. So thank you, Mark.
And for the Chiefs, 1, 2, 3. I mean, I'm not sure about 4, but and 5 stay the same, right? I mean, that's still our approach. We're not making a philosophical change. Yeah. And then 4, expand and prescribe. It stays the same. Yeah, I don't think.
When we did the retreat out in Bear Valley, and I know we prioritized sheets and sheets of stuff. Is any of that? I apologize, I don't have that in front of me. I know that was an all-day process, and I never saw anything come out of that retreat. So that's why I'm, interested. How does that tie back to this?
Yeah, we can jump into the notes from that retreat and see if we can pull some additional perspectives that we could add to this. This is just what the operations committee approved last February.
And for me, I'm just going back to the earlier discussion we had about the development of the work plan. And so just trying to want to understand how the, how this affects the JPA budget overall and when we'll kind of get this. I mean, all these things come with a cost. And you had mentioned earlier that we would get some of that information a bit earlier than we've had previously, or maybe I'm misunderstanding your comments from earlier.
Yeah, so generally, this guidance, I would communicate this to the working group that comes up with the projects and program kind of proposals. They start working through that January, February. We internally and work on the JPA-wide proposals. And over the last few years, we've been trying to do that earlier and earlier in the process because it affects the rest of the core budget. And so, these, I think it's, now is an opportunity to think through, is there anything that we've been missing or have been emphasizing that you'd like to see emphasized next year? Like, are we lacking something in our 25-26 work plan that you'd like to see? Maybe think through that, and we can help convey that message to member agency staff who are coming up with these projects and programs.
Another question, maybe this wasn't from this group, but is there contemplated another or countywide grant program or is that another committee again coming to this kind of cold?
Yeah, so the countywide grant program that's currently focusing on Zone 0, vents, gutter guards, some vegetation, fence connections, etc. That has been an annual program. And so through this process, we would take existing programs and resubmit them for next fiscal year with any changes that seem, necessary. So that grant program, for example, that grant program was developed through a subcommittee of the Advisory Technical Committee with member agency staff from multiple agencies, and Josh Hampshire, our grant specialist, who's been helping lead that conversation. So that program has evolved over time, and each year is tweaked a little bit to address, challenges and et cetera. The dollar amount might change from year to year. This year seems to have gone or is going quite smoothly, and so probably not a ton of changes for next year. Definitely some needs that have been identified might be addressed, and I think that subcommittee will reconvene and kind of some potential changes. Graham.
Any other comments? Any of our cohorts on Zoom have any comments or questions? I mean, it feels like down to 7. This is really from our fire, chief experts of how we came up with the strategic guidance, right? I think you're all, aligned with that. But it would be helpful between now and then just to see the notes from the retreat. If there's anything else we should add to it, that'll help us with our decision making.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So for next steps for staff, I'll delete LRA map language and then go back and review retreat language and some of the learnings from that process, and see if there are things that are relevant that we could either add or change to the existing 8 here. And I'll present that in January and add it to a staff report so you guys can review beforehand.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any members of the public that are on Zoom that wish to speak on any of the discussion items that we've heard today?
And for those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. So there are no hands at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ann and team, for that's a lot of information today. Really exciting about the technology, the visuals. I like where it's headed. Yeah, it's really good stuff. Does anybody have anything for the good of the order for staff? Are there any future agenda items?
Todd, not for a future agenda per se. I just wanted to acknowledge Elisa Schiffman, who I know sent out a communication that she's moving on to other endeavors. She served as the treasurer for the past several years from WPA. I can speak personally for myself and our agency. She was a great help, very supportive, kept everybody well informed on general broader finance things with all the submissions of everything. So I wish Elisa the best.
Appreciate that. Second that. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you.
Yes.
And Chair, I did just want to clarify for the minutes earlier, I stated that we had a unanimous approval of the consent calendar. That was actually an approval. It passed, but there was an abstention from City of Santa Fe. So just to clarify for the minutes.
Thank you for that. So noted. Okay. Item 9, it is 11:39. We'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.